Hey guys, so welcome to harmony analysis video number 2, looking at bass parts and how they fit into certain songs, how they fit into the harmony, how they interplay with the chords and scales. It's going to be a bit advanced like the first one, and again it's like a bit of a format test, just mixing things up, seeing what's the best format to do it, what's the best way to do it. But I am going to do more like beginner and entry level ones as well, and intermediate ones, and talk about how to get into it. Okay, so we're going to look at a Stevie Wonder tune, I Was Made to Love Her, another Jameson part. Going to try and keep the video shorter today, but still pack it full of information. It's going to move quite quickly, but I'm going to put all the support and documentation, on my website, so you can have a look through it in your own time, download it, analyze it, look at all that. This is all my opinion, like I said last time, based on my knowledge of music theory and all that, but take it with a pinch of salt, do your own research, trust your ears, all that good stuff. So let's get right into it. So I Was Made to Love Her starts with like this unison bass part with strings. Okay, so Stevie in his arrangements, he loves these unison parts, whether it's like Sir Duke, Master Blaster, you know, where all the instruments sort of play the same thing. Okay, so let's have a real quick look at this intro, what Jameson plays. Okay, so the line is like this. Okay, that's the basic essence of the line. So if we look at what notes he plays, and I should preface this because I said the key so late in the last video, this song is in F major, okay? Now, we're not going to talk about F major and the chords F major just yet. When we get into the chord analysis, we'll have a chat about that. But just so that we got some context to start with, this is in F major. Okay, so the notes that are in this unison line are F, C, D, F, D. Okay, so if we were going to number them in terms of Roman numerals as like placements in the scale, we get 1, 5, 6, and then 1, or root again. So remember, our F major scale is 1F, 2G, 3A, 4B flat, 5C, 6D, 7E, and then 8 or 1F again. So we get 1, 5, 6, 1, or 8. Okay, so if we were going to harmonize that into a chord just to begin with, and we take them notes and just play them all together, we'd have F, C, D, F. Okay, now to my ears, that's like a 6 chord. Okay, so if we were to put this major third in, so we get this triad F, A, C, and then put this D on top, and then the root again, you get sort of a major 6 chord, okay, which would be F, A, C, D, which appeared in the last tune, funnily enough, which was 8, okay. Now, there's no sort of harmonization, there's no like chord or anything like that, but let's just hear what that would sound like if we did harmonize that. So I'm going to play it in the lower octave so I can play this voice to my right hand. So F, A, C, D. There's your F major 6. Okay, cool. That sounds really cool against it. So we know that that like sort of describes it harmony-wise. So if you did, like if you were playing it live, you wanted to throw a chord over it, something that would work. So this line, super quickly, is in, like for my ears and in my experience, it's derived from like a pentatonic line. So you know that we usually have 7 notes in our major scale. So let's count through them again. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 would be 1 again. So a pentatonic is exactly how it sounds. Penta meaning 5, or pent like the prefix. So it means that we have a scale that is still major in essence. So it still contains all the information that can qualify it as a major scale, but it's only got 5 of the 7 notes. So the notes we leave out are the 4th note and the 7th note. So the 4th note in F major would be B flat, and the 7th note would be E. Okay, so instead of getting F major, basic, straight up, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. F major pentatonic, we get F, G, A, skip B flat, C, D, skip E, and then we get F, root again. So then we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we get the root again, okay? So if we look at them notes in the F major pentatonic, we get F, G, A, C, D, and then F again. And then if you look at the line, we can see that it's built from that. Doesn't matter too much, I just want to give you a bit of context, okay? Now, a really interesting thing is how Jameson exits this line going into the verse, and this is where we'll start to talk about the harmony of it and the chords, okay? So, if we see here, if I could just use technology and I put the markup on, okay? So here, at the end of this sort of 2-bar intro with this line that we've just talked about, Jameson exits that really interestingly, okay? So after the second sort of riff, if you like, he plays... he doesn't play that. He plays F. And then he plays C, G, F, C. Okay, now why is that really interesting? So even though there's not really any harmony around it or anything, there's like a lead in the harmonica, he exits that sort of on like a dominant to tonic function. Okay, now we're not talking about chords now, we're just talking about purely in Jameson's head, how he exits the line to resolve into the next note or the next chord. So he leaves that line on a C. Okay, so he plays the notes C, G, F, C really quickly in semiquaves. Okay, which is really, really interesting. So we spoke in the last video how the 5th degree of the major scale, or the 5 chord, is usually dominant, and it has this relationship where it wants to pull you back home to the root. Now the bar after this that we're going to look at now is going to be an F major chord, and Jameson plays the root of the scale, he plays an F, so it's almost like he shouted at you at the end of this riff saying, look, I'm going to play sort of this 5 sort of phrase, which, you know, it's sort of like a 5 sus4, that doesn't matter, but he's playing like this 5 to get you right back and lead your ear right back into this F. So if I play it slowly, the last line would be C, G, F, C, and then you get, okay, or if I voice that F higher, we get C, G, F, C, and then we get, okay, which is really interesting. Now obviously, we said last time, I'm not saying Jameson thought all of this through and like wrote it out and was like super. It's just like the way he played, but it's just interesting like what he leans into and what he decides to do, which is really cool. Okay, so super quickly, let's just talk about the chord progression if I was made to love it, because it's dead interesting. Again, you can say dead interesting for Stevie Wonder and Jameson all the time. You can say it every other sentence. Everything you do is really cool. Okay, so the chord progression starts on an F major. We're in the key of F major. So if we harmonize F major, or we see what chords you get in F major, we get this. Okay, so we get our first chord, which is an F. Then we get a G minor. Then we get an A minor. Then we get a B flat major. Then we get a C major, or dominant 7. Then we get a D minor. And then we get an E half diminished, which is unusual. Then we get an F major turned. Okay, which is super cool. Now there's lots of extensions in this, okay, but they're not necessarily diatonic or from the major scale, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if we were going to do that with extensions, okay, we get an F major 7, then we get a G minor 7, then we get an A minor 7, then we get a B flat major 7, then we get this C dominant 7 again, which we spoke about, then we get a D minor 7, and then we just get this E half diminished again, like we talked about, then we get this F major, okay. Super duper interesting harmony, okay, and we will speak all about this, but the reason we're not speaking about it now, and the reason I just wanted to sort of preface it with the F major chords, is that in this tune Stevie Wonder does something really interesting with the harmony. He doesn't stay diatonic. There's only one note that's diatonic or relating back to the F major scale, and that's this first chord, which is F. So it starts on an F major, okay, which is cool. We all know that sort of home, okay, that's like our home, our first note, or we'd call it our tonic. Okay, now if we look at the next bar, our next chord is a B flat minor 7, okay. Now we know there is a type of B flat and F major, but it's a B flat major 7, okay. So our B flat and F major is this. Okay, but the note that Stevie plays, or sorry, the chord that Stevie plays is this. Okay, he plays a B flat minor 7. Now I actually, to my ears, think it's a B flat minor 9. I think he plays this. Okay, and he puts the 9 in. It doesn't matter, we'll go with the official transcription, B flat minor 7, okay, which we know is not diatonic or not necessarily from the F major scale. We're going to talk about where it comes from in a minute, but the next chord after that is a dominant functioning chord, okay, which is sort of flagging something up, and sort of, like we said, a dominant chord when we're transcribing or when we're listening to chord progressions can sort of be used as a landmark or a marker because it's a functional chord. And we spoke about it a bit at the beginning when Jameson exited that riff on that C. You could use dominant functioning chords to take you home, okay, to the root or to the tonic of a new key. Now, I know in the transcription it doesn't change key, but I want to have a talk to you about this, okay? So the next chord we've got is this E flat 9, okay, which is a dominant chord. So we got E flat, and we got G, B flat, D flat, E flat, which is a dominant 7. Then he puts the 9 on top, okay, which is an F, funnily enough, which could be used to tie us back into like the original harmony or like the key that we're hearing that it's in, okay, what it starts on. So, okay, really interesting. So let's talk about where these chords come from, okay. Now these chords are borrowed chords from a parallel key. Okay, now that sounds like, whoa, what is that? But I'll talk you through it, and it is dead simple. Harmony-wise, it's dead simple theoretically when I talk you through it, how they've got there, but it's quite complicated to sort of apply and make it sound like this. Okay, so if I was looking at them, like without talking about parallel keys or without minors or anything, but I was looking at just them next two chords after F, that B flat minor 7, which is this, and then that E flat 9, and someone said to me, where are they from? I would say they're a 2-5 in A flat major. Okay, that would be my first sort of jump to. Okay, so how have I got there? Let's very quickly harmonize the A flat major scale. Okay, so we have A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G natural, A flat. If we're going to put chords then, we have A flat major 7, B flat minor 7, okay, C minor 7, D flat major 7, E flat dominant 7, F minor, okay, so remember that, F minor on the 6th degree, G half diminished, and then we have A flat. Okay, so straight away I would look at that and see a function of a 2, 5, 1. Okay, but it's a bit more complicated than that. So remember we said on the 6th degree of A flat major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we have an F minor or an F minor 7, okay? This is the relative minor. Now this is the parallel key. We can call it that Stevie Wonder has used to borrow these chords from, which is super cool. Okay, so we started in F major. And we know that when we find the relative minor of this sort of new key, this A flat major, we know the relative minor and the tonic of the new key, or A flat major being the tonic and F minor being the relative minor. We know they have a cool relationship. They're like interchangeable almost. So both of them scales share exactly the same notes and exactly the same chords. So what Jameson's done here, he's done a really cool compositional technique. He's gone, okay, we're starting in F major, but now all of a sudden we're in F minor, and I'm going to use this chord, okay, which is a borrowed chord from F minor, which is the 4 chord, and then I'm going to use this chord from F minor, which is the 7 chord, okay, which is ace. Now everything in your ear when you hear that, because it's so functional and so full of tension, when you hear this 2-5, this B flat minor 7 to E flat 9, it wants to resolve to A flat major, okay, which, like we said, is why sort of my ears and me looking at that with like experience and transcription, I think, okay, let's go into A flat major. But then we think about the relative minor, F minor, okay, which is really cool. Now I know we've spent like loads of time in harmony. Let's get into the bass part. I just wanted to give you a bit of context. We'll talk about the chords as they go, okay? So this very first chord, this F major, Jameson again does something really cool over it. So Jameson has a really cool habit of, one, using weight and using ascending and descending lines to sort of pull you and push you and make you feel like bouncy. But two, he has a really, really good way of making like, and I don't want to say something out of nothing because it sounds disrespectful to Stevie Wonder, but he can take a very basic, simple chord with basic, simple arrangements, with basic, simple drum parts, and not there's anything wrong with simple, but there's not loads to grab onto like compositionally, and he can make something really interesting out of them. Okay, so if we look at what Jameson's playing, so he starts off with this F. Now, interestingly, he's up the octave here, so he's not playing his like lowest F on the bass that he could play. And it's to do with this weight he's playing up here, which sort of all of a sudden lightens things up. You know, you don't have this, you have, and it's all of a sudden like a bit lighter. I know it's abstract, but it's a bit like lighter and bouncier. Okay, so he plays this and he plays a dotted crotchet rhythm, so 1 and 2. Okay, and then you got the and there, and we'll talk about what happens next. And then the note after that, he does something again really interesting. So after he's played this F, he plays a descending pattern, and he plays D, C. Okay, now even though this is really fast as a passing note in semiquavers, he's sort of hinting at this like F6 vibe. If we listen to that slowly, F and then D, C. Okay, so we know D is the 6th, like a tension note, because it's not within the chord. It's an F major chord, not an F6. And then he plays C, which is the 5th, which is very stable and concrete. Okay, so he plays F, D, C, okay? And then he does something really cool. Then he plays D, and then he plays D sharp, and then he plays E, F, okay? So he plays this little chromatic line, which we've gone from playing this F, descending, D, C, and then ascending again up to the root, which you get 6. Then we get flat 7, E flat, and then we get major 7, and then we get F. But it all happens so fast that it doesn't really inform the harmony like we spoke about last time. So we get, okay, which all of a sudden you just get a sense of movement because the notes are played so fast. Then he does something, again, really interesting. So on the 4th beat, he's just played this F at the beginning of the 4th beat. Then he plays an A natural, okay, which we know is the 3rd. So we look F, A, C. So we'd make an inversion, but again, he's not hanging around long enough to really inform the harmony that much. Then he plays a C. Then he plays a C flat. Or a B, okay, B natural. And then that descends into our new root of the B flat minor 7, B flat. Okay, so if we look at it, break it down super slow, we've basically got a great use of weight using the higher octave. Then we got descending. Then we got ascending again. Okay, then we got descending again, a big jump, like a minor 6 jump to A natural. Then we get, okay, another descending part. So he's almost got this bounce, he's got this high up octave, and then he pulls you back down, and he pushes you back up, and then he pulls you back down as you descend into the new chord. And again, it's a bit of this like jazzology, like I mentioned last time. He's using chromatic approach notes, again, to smooth out lines. Okay, so obviously within that F major chord, he could have just played like round the F major scale if he wanted to, but these chromatic approach notes, they make it sound a bit like crunchier and tastier because they have this like a bit of out sound. Even though they're really quick, they don't inform the harmony. You can sort of, even to the untrained ear, you can tell that a lot of them aren't in that scale. And then he also has this like use of pulling us down and like using scale-wise or stepwise motion or chromatic approach notes, chromatic motion to get us into new chords and sort of softens progressions. Because like F to B flat is quite far away, that perfect 4th. But the way Jameson approached it, especially with this last descending line, he sort of really makes you, feel like that gap's really short, between the notes, the interval, which is dead interesting. Okay, so then he does something really simple when we're on the B flat minor 7. So as we're on the B flat minor 7, he's just descended into it. So, sorry. Okay, we get this. Then he plays this dotted quaver that he loves. So 1 E and A. And then on the A, he's got a muted note. And then he plays a 5th, which is which is F, the 5th of B flat minor 7. And then he pushes, or on the an, he plays the E flat. Okay, so we get like 1 E and a 2 and. Okay, and that's where the chord changes. So then we get 1 E and 2, and then we get this chord. Okay, we get this E flat 9, this like dominant functioning chord. Okay, which is really interesting. Now over this chord, Jameson does another thing that's really cool. Okay, now obviously a lot of this you got to take with a pinch of salt. I wasn't in Jameson's head, I wasn't there, I didn't see what he had in front of him, I didn't see like how he was thinking. From playing a lot of his lines and sort of studying him a lot and like reading all the books in him and that, obviously he was amazing at walk and bass, he was amazing at jazz, he obviously knew all of his harmony inside out, he knew his resolutions, he knew what chords were functional, he knew what chords you use to get into different keys and all that kind of stuff. So this is where like a bit of this comes in. So over this E flat 9, he starts with an E flat, so he plays this up here, so get this E flat, sounds like that on a bass guitar. So we play E flat, and then he plays a B flat, then he plays an A as a passing note to get to this A flat. Okay, so again, it's really, really quick, so it doesn't inform the harmony too much. Okay, so we get E flat, then we get, okay, so it's not too quick, it's all semi-quavers. Now, it's really interesting that he does this. So he plays E flat, B flat, A natural, okay, which is like the tritone away. Okay, which is super crunchy, but again, it's so fast, doesn't inform the harmony. And then he goes to an A flat, even though the chord doesn't change. So the chord stays on A flat 9, but he goes to, E flat 9, dominant, like a functional dominant chord. But he goes to this A flat, and then plays a C natural. So to me, this is almost like him joking, like he's saying, like, look, I know these are borrowed chords from F minor, but I know that F minor and A flat share the same notes, so look at this. Okay, this is where it like should resolve to. Now, whether that was just like a pattern that's in his fingers from jazz or not, because we usually get a 2-5-1, so you usually get like a B flat minor 7 to E flat 9, and then maybe he was just used to going to that A flat, or whether it's him just having like a little inside joke and being like, look, this is where it usually resolves to. Because again, we get this. Okay, which is cool. Now, this last C, as well is not just played after the A flat because it's the major third of A flat. So if we think about A flat major, we have A flat, C, E flat, okay. Now in that line over this E flat 9, Jameson played E flat, B flat, A natural, A flat, and then C. So it's almost like he was starting to do an A flat major arpeggio. Okay, but this C sort of doubles in function. He uses this C as a chromatic approach note for the next note that he plays, okay? So the next chords in the next 2 bars are D flat major, and then we get E flat major, then we get F major. Okay, really cool. So we get in F minor, we get a flat 6, flat 7, tonic or root. Okay, so how have we found that? Super quickly. We said we're in a parallel key of F minor, which is where these chords have come from. The B flat minor 7, the E flat 9, D flat, E flat, F. Okay, so if we look at the chords in F minor, we know they're the same as the chords in F major because it's the relative minor. Sorry, we know they're the same as the chords in A flat major. It's still early, because you know it's the relative minor to A flat major, but in a different order. So if we harmonize the chords from F minor, we get this. We get F minor, then we get G half diminished, then we get A flat major, E flat minor, C minor, D flat major, E flat major, F. Okay, so if we count through our F minor scale, we get this 1, 2, 3, then we get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, which is F minor again. Okay, so this last chord progression, this D flat, E flat, F, you'll hear it a lot in show tunes. You'll hear it a lot as like a minor resolution, if you like, and we call it a flat 6, flat 7 tonic. Okay, why do we call it that? We call it that because D flat is the flat 6th or the 6th degree of the F minor scale. Okay, E flat is the flat 7 or the minor 7 of the minor 7 of the major scale, or the 7th degree of the F minor scale. So the chords that we get on them degrees are, on our 6th degree of our minor, we get a D flat major on our F minor, and let's just check that out. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then on our 7th degree, we get an E flat major. Okay, and let's check that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we can say it's a flat 6, flat 7 tonic. Now, obviously, usually the tonic, because we would be in F minor, usually would be a minor chord, and that's what your ear will be used to hearing. So your ear will have heard this before. Okay, so we get D flat major, E flat major, F minor. Okay, so your ear will have heard that. Now, Stevie Wonder does something really cool. Okay, so he says, okay, I'm telling you you're in F. Our first chord was an F major, yet we've sort of took a diversion into F minor with all of these borrowed chords, but I still want us to be resoundingly playing over this like sort of major feeling, major chord at the end. So he says, instead of an F minor being at the end, I'm going to put an F major at the end, and it gives this like real sense of like uplift. Okay, so what you get is you get a D flat major, E flat major, then F major, okay, which is super duper cool. Now, Jameson takes a really cool approach in this, and for Jameson as well, he takes a super simplistic approach and a super disciplined approach. This isn't to say that he wasn't disciplined at all, but he was a fantastic improviser. You know, he could do parts where the line wasn't the same twice, and all of them are like absolutely genius and inspired, a bit like Darling Dear. Like, once he gets into the full swing of that, and we will do an analysis on that at some point, once he gets into the full swing of that, there's like no stopping him. Every line's different, it's fully syncopated, extremely difficult to play, but amazing to listen to. Like, and a bit of a tangent, but this is something else that he has. He can make super complicated lines that if I played them on a recording, people would go, Craig, that's too busy. Do you know what I mean? It's just so busy. Jameson has a way of, and it is through this like weight and threading and approaching, where his lines don't feel as busy as they are. There's so many notes sometimes, so many, and it's like sort of something that I've like lost sleep over, thinking like, how does he do it? As nerdy as that sounds, how does he do it? But he just has this way about him, you know. And I think like the recordings help, like the timbre of his bass and how it was like spongy and inoffensive and not toppy and sort of big saturated sound, which, you know, helped a bit. But a lot of it's like compositional, you know. He could just play so many notes and everything just felt right, and it was crazy. It really was crazy. Okay, but something really interesting that he does here is he takes the opposite approach. He just goes super simplistic and he plays triads, okay, with passing notes, which is dead interesting. So what I mean by that is, over this D flat major, all he plays is D flat, F, A flat, okay, exactly that. So he just describes every note in the triad, okay, and it's really powerful, and it's something that he keeps revisiting, which is why I said he's really disciplined with it. He keeps revisiting it, okay. So this is sort of how he signs off each line, if you like, okay, which is really, really cool. So he plays D flat, F, A flat triad, then he plays D natural, but again plays it so fast, just as a quaver, that it's a passing note to get you to E flat, and then he does the same thing. He plays E flat, G, B flat, okay, which is your arpeggio notes. This is a inversion, but it's your arpeggio notes, okay. And then he plays F at the end of that, okay, as a passing note, and then he gets back in to this riff that we talked about, which is really, really cool. So over this last riff, there's no F6 either. We talked about the harmony of it, and if you were to harmonize it, it's just purely over this F major, which I think is really cool. Like, you know, if you add the 6, it sort of incorporates the line too much, if you like, you know, and that D loses tension because it sounds to your ear like, okay, yeah, it should be there. Okay, you get like a D minor sound there, but by just playing it over the F, you know, you sort of like make a deal out of that 6, and it sort of sticks out, which is really cool, which might be what they wanted. Okay, now as the line goes on, the harmony stays the same, so he's still borrowing from what we call like a parallel key from this minor version of F major, so F minor, you know, like, or you can think of it in A flat major if you want to, but entirely up to you. Now, I feel like, I know I give it a lot of context, and I know we spent a lot of time on that, but that's super important. If you were creating a bass line, or if I was soloing over this, I would instantly see the parent key of it, which is like a term that I wanted to introduce you, that I talk to a lot of students about. So it's almost like, when we talk about parent keys, we're almost trying to figure out the why of chords. Where did they come from? Why are they there? You know, it's easy to think, oh, well, that's just a really cool progression, which it is. But if you want to build it and you want to play over it, it's good to know where they come from. So look for parent keys, look for landmarks, look for red flags like dominant functioning chords, look for 2/5s, any sort of functional harmony that can give you a bit of a wave and be like, look, this might be where it's coming from. So if I was going to solo over that or create a line, I'd see the first part in F, I'd see the first over an F6, even though there's no chord there, the first, you know, this with no B natural, like I just played a little mistake. And then I'd see F as F major, you know. And then after that, I would see F minor or A flat major if I was going to solo, because that's what the harmony is. Okay, which is really, really interesting. So as far as the rest of the bass line goes, like we said, and if we look down here at sort of these, Jameson takes the first bar as an opportunity to be pretty syncopated, sometimes super syncopated, but still playing around with the same ideas, okay? Adding 6s, 4s, little bits of tension, but it's moving so fast that it sort of doesn't inform the harmony. It's more just like passing, and he's almost like weaving this like tapestry that he does, but he always starts the F up the octave, okay? So he doesn't ever use his lowest F, he's always... Okay, and again, just to keep it light. Sometimes, like in the next line, he makes a big deal of the 6th, but he's always just creating this movement. Then, as the second bar comes in of that phrase, he starts to sort of slow the movement down and get a bit more concrete. So it tends to go from like semi-quavers and dotted quavers to just like quavers, you know, just like an 8th pulse. And then the last 2 bars, he always signs off with the same thing. Tiny little variations here and there, but always the same thing. He's always playing these arpeggios that he's playing, and then he goes into the riff, okay, always doing that, which again is something interesting. Not to say that Jameson can't be disciplined and can't be contained, because look at things like My Girl, where he is, you know, super contained, super disciplined, but I think it's just like a really, really interesting thing to look at. I know this has been long, guys, but I hope it's been helpful for you. I was going to try and keep it short, but there's just like so much to say, and that's literally just from like the first, like 16 bars of it or something, which is crazy. I hope they're helping. I know they're advanced, okay, I know that, and don't, you know, I've had a lot of messages being like, look, they're well out of my grasp for now, and that's absolutely fine. I am literally going to go back to bare bones. This is more just like, one, I get a lot of requests for things like this, especially Jameson, but 2, this is just like a format, an experiment for me, just to see what works best. But I'm absolutely 100% going to do ones that are more, you know, sort of beginner, intermediate, more accessible, talk about how we can hear things and how we can like get into it initially. But I hope it's helped, guys. I'm going to put all this up on my website in a section, probably the download section, just so you can have a look through this with some support and documents, maybe some scales, maybe some stuff we've talked about. And I'm also going to make a brand new ramps page on my website as well, just in case you're interested in checking that out. But thanks for sticking with me, guys. I hope it's helped. Feel free to message always, even if I take a bit to get back to you. It's just because I've got so many messages, but I will get back. All right, cheers, guys. Thanks.